Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thank you guys for joining me. I'm going to be your astrologer this week. This is the astro weather for October 26th to November 2nd, 2025. I'll be taking you through the transits for the week ahead, putting a special emphasis on Mercury entering into the sign of Sagittarius. If you guys like my content, you want to see more of it, subscribe to the channel, click that bell button below so you're alerted as to when I have new videos. I'm here every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday trying to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, consider sharing on your socials. While you're there, follow me on X at BTVAstro, and please leave me a comment below. Drop your rising sign and let me know how you're feeling with this Mercury ingress. Is it topsy-turvy for you? All right, just a quick reminder, we are going to be having live astrology readings this week. However, it will not be on Friday. So we're going to be doing it on Thursday evening because Friday's Halloween. So I want to give you guys some time to trick or treat and do your thing. So we will be here Thursday at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. That's going to be 4 p.m. Pacific and 7 p.m. Eastern. I hope to see you guys there. Come and join me and get your live astrology readings. I'll be answering your questions about your chart or your synastry aspects. Now, this week is, it's interesting. There's a kind of a continuation of some of the watery vibes from last week. We're going to be really looking at the day-by-day transits from the 26th to November the 2nd. And we're going to be spotlighting Mercury entering into Sagittarius. I do think that Mercury's shift into this cardinal fire sign is definitely bringing a wave of expansive thinking and adventurous communication. So whether you guys are planning trips or debating philosophies or simply just navigating daily chats, this transit is definitely going to shake things up. So we'll explore the daily vibes. I'll give you guys key transits to watch for this week, including how to make the most of it. So grab your chart and we'll go ahead and get into it. Now this week is carrying this rather optimistic energy, and that's because we are seeing Mercury enter into the sign of Sagittarius. This will be amplifying big picture ideas and a thirst for knowledge. However, we are in the pre-retrograde shadow. So with that kind of being in play, I'm expecting a little bit of foreshadowing of upcoming reviews. Conversations may spark now, and it's going to be kind of connected to old patterns or old beliefs or potentially even old plans. So the overall mood is adventurous, but it's a little scattered. We're going to be blending Scorpio's intensity from the lingering water sign transits with Sagittarius fire. Obviously, there's a lot of emotional undercurrents from the moon's, kind of movement this week, and it's really urging this balance between intuition and action. Watch for breakthroughs and understanding, but you want to ground yourself and avoid overcommitments this week. Now, the key transits that you want to watch for are actually going to begin on October 29th. Really early in the morning, we're going to see that Mercury enters into Sagittarius. So it is leaving Scorpio temporarily. It will come back to this sign in the retrograde in November. But our minds and our kind of communication style is shifting into something that's more bold, expansive, optimistic. Obviously, Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. It is a little bit more blunt, and it definitely is about encouraging learning and travel, but sometimes it can lead to over-exaggeration or missing some of the details. Now, that very same day, we are going to see later in the morning, Mercury will make an opposition to Uranus in Gemini, and this is the first time we've seen this particular aspect since Uranus has moved into the mutable air sign of Gemini. Final moments, Uranus is retrograding back. It's going to be in Taurus soon, but this is a bit colorful considering Mercury is the dispositor of Uranus and Gemini. So this brings up tension, unexpected kind of plot twists, sudden insights, and likely disruptions in how we are thinking, connecting, or traveling. It is positive for innovative ideas, but it's going to clash with our routines and potentially watch for some tech-related issues or some shocking, surprising news. Now, Mercury, before it moves into this particular sign, it's still kind of slightly in a trine with Neptune and Pisces. You're actually going to see that right at the beginning of the week. That's where it's going to be a little bit better, taking place kind of the 27th and the 28th. And this is going to be kind of highlighting where we have to use our intuition, we have to use our imagination, focus on emotional communication. It's great for spiritual or creative work or discussions, but there can be some illusion. So it's interesting that we're going to see Mercury kind of come out of that trine and then go into Sagittarius and oppose Uranus, because we're going to maybe feel like something's coming, there's something that's about to shift, and we have to listen to our dreams and our guts to kind of navigate this next week. Now, Mars in Scorpio will be trining Jupiter in Jupiter in Cancer. So this is going to be nice because around the 28th, when this is setting up, Mars is also still in a loose trine with Saturn and Neptune. It's actually building into that throughout the week. So we've got this really great water trine that's kind of hanging around all week long. Mars in its home sign, really amplifying energy for passionate pursuits, obviously anything that's investigative or financial. And it's going to be really finding a lot more confidence when it's trining Jupiter in Cancer, better emotional home and family connections. And it's really about meeting our goals and having some kind of harmonious action and growth at the same time. Now, when Mercury moves into Sagittarius, it's also going to slightly be in a sextile to Pluto in Aquarius, and that's going to be happening around the 30th. This is really great for empowering dialogues. It does facilitate deeper research or kind of persuasive talk and uncovering necessary truths. Now, we will see Venus this week continue to go through the sign of Libra. However, she will come into an opposition with Chiron and Aries around November the 2nd, early in the morning. This can create some relational dilemmas. It's going to be all about healing wounds in relationships and also highlighting insecurities in partnerships, really encouraging us to embrace vulnerability and working together. Right around the same time, later in the morning on the 2nd, we will see then Venus come into a square with Jupiter in Cancer. This is expansive, it's kind of social energy, but there is major potential for overdoing it, for overindulging, having a sweet tooth, overspending. I think it's great for enjoyment, but we need to set necessary boundaries when it comes to love, family, and relationships. Now, I will be talking about Mercury going into Sagittarius next in my video. I just want to remind you guys that I already put out an advanced video on the Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. I got a little bit ahead of it because I wanted to give you guys that insights before we saw the retrograde shadow begin. So if you guys want to see that, you can check that out. That's going to kind of show you Mercury going through Scorpio, and then I'll do a video later down the road about Mercury re-entering into the sign of Sag. Retrogrades have like several kind of phases to the cycle. I also talk a little bit about how it digs into Scorpio and what that means, and it's also covered in the November horoscope. So if you guys want to prepare for the Mercury retrograde that begins on November the 9th, I highly recommend checking out that video. So on to Mercury in Sagittarius. So as many of you guys know, when we have a Mercury retrograde, sometimes Mercury dips into another sign, sometimes it does not. But when we see a retrograde, Mercury spends an extended period of time in one sign. So we're going to see two phases. We're going to see Mercury in Sagittarius first from October the 29th through the 18th of November. Then it will retrograde back into Scorpio, and then we are going to see it return back to Sagittarius December the 11th through January the 1st, 2026. So if you happen to have any planets in Sagittarius from about 0 to 7 degrees, your personal planetary placements are going to be right in the line of fire of this Mercury retrograde. If you have anything that's going to be around about 29 to 20 degrees of Scorpio, you're going to be feeling the effects as well during the retrograde, but I'm going to refer you guys to that other video. So this is just the first phase. It will be affecting those of you guys who are ruled by Mercury the most. So my Virgos, my Geminis, and my Sagittarius risings, you guys are going to be impacted by Mercury's ingress into this sign. Now, by now, because we've spoken so much about Mercury, we know that Mercury is connected to communication, whether that's emails, documents, contracts, anything revolving around phones, all that stuff, gadgets. And it's also the planet that deals with intellect and short trips. It's connected to siblings, technology, commerce, as well as trade, and our daily routines. So when Mercury goes through the sign of Sagittarius, Sagittarius is like the lens that we're going to be kind of perceiving Mercury through, and it's going to be bringing up Sagittarius themes. So this is a sign that's ruled by Jupiter, mutable fire. It is very well known for having a love of culture and philosophy, higher education, like college campuses and teachers and professors. It's also connected to long distance travel, specifically air travel. It's known for being optimistic, adventurous, and it has a knack for publishing spiritual quests as well as anything that deals with the legal system. So when Mercury is in Sagittarius, it's kind of fusing that quick-witted Mercury kind of sense with that expansive kind of view of Sagittarius. Positive is that it does lead to more enthusiastic, optimistic, bigger picture kind of thinking. This is a placement of somebody who's a visionary, always thinking about communication that's very direct and also inspirational. But sometimes it's known to exaggerate things, kind of blow things out of proportion. It can be a little blunt. It can also be scattered because it becomes so big on the story or the theme of something that it doesn't always look at the details. So having Mercury debilitated in this sign, it's in pre-shadow, a little bit of some challenges right off the bat. I think some of the themes of when Mercury goes through Sagittarius, we're really collectively looking at exploring bigger ideas. It's also great for debates on ethics or beliefs. We find that there is increased interest in travel or cultural exchanges. There is a huge emphasis on international trade, as well as anything that's connecting to international relationships. We tend to be a little bit more optimistic when it comes to planning, but we do see that there are challenges with precision and follow through. It's almost like Mercury, when it's in its pre-shadow, it's going to burn out and it's going to go back into Scorpio and it's going to go, wait, do we have the money for this? Is this actually, what we want? Are we afraid to kind of go a little bit deeper? So you guys will notice that even though this is a sign known for being optimistic and teaching and storytelling and broadening horizons, there is a need to be careful with what we're believing, what we're sharing, and even anything connecting to our travel plans between now and the end of the year. Now, like I said, Mercury is debilitated in this sign. In traditional astrology, Mercury is actually in detriment when it's in Sagittarius, and that's because it's in its opposite sign to Gemini. So because it's broad and philosophical, that energy really clashes with more of the nitty-gritty need for detail, logic, and adaptability as known by Gemini. So in this particular placement, it can manifest as feeling very scattered with our thoughts. We can become very rigid or dogmatic with our opinions, and there could be a difficulty focusing on, the details and making communication feel more exaggerated or like less precise. So it's also significant because Mercury has that tie to the South Node in Virgo. So you know that between now and like next summer, as the South Node goes through Virgo, we're still untangling all of these like karmic release points that's connected to some of the lower vibrational energies of Virgo. So being a perfectionist, over, analyzing things, being too service oriented, giving away too much. So as Mercury goes through Sagittarius, it's not quite squaring the nodes. It's a little too wide for a square because it'll retrograde at 6. But it is bringing up that there is tension where it's really pushing us to focus on growth and letting go of Virgo's more kind of critical, nitpicky tendencies. Maybe we have to embrace more of the kind of faith and big picture wisdom that's tied to the North Node in Pisces and also Mercury in Sag. And it's really asking us to resolve any past life themes, particularly when it comes to inspiration. So what you guys want to watch for throughout this transit is blunt or like foot in the mouth type moments. And maybe if you have a lot of planets in the early degrees of Sag or the mutable signs, maybe if you're a Gemini or Virgo rising, you guys are going to feel that a little bit more. I also would just watch for being a little bit too overly, I think, confident or optimistic in the Sagittarius area of your chart. And we can be very opinionated. We can lead to a lot of like heated debates. I'm anticipating that there's going to be some travel mishaps, and I'll get into that in a second, but I'm 100% predicting that, or glitches, especially when Mercury comes into an opposition with Uranus. Now, those shadow themes may also preview some of the retrograde revisions that we're going to be going on or going through in the month of November. So note some of the things that are kind of emerging now. Throughout the retrograde, we are actually going to see in the pre-shadow Mercury conjunct Mars and Mercury oppose Uranus. And then when the Mercury retrograde begins in November, it'll retrograde conjunct Mars, go back into Scorpio and oppose Uranus. So there's lots of shocks and surprises. I do think November is going to be more financial themes. It's going to be more things revolving around debt, banking, credit crisis, liquidity issues. When it actually makes the first opposition to Uranus in Gemini, I think it's going to be more about plot twists and stories changing, especially with media narratives. and lots of themes revolving around Sagittarius stuff. So where things are changing when it comes to college campuses, education, higher education, things that are connected to major things being overturned in like court cases, or we can hear about major kind of media coverage on court cases, or court cases coming back into the news. I'm also very concerned. I mean, in light of what's going on right now with the government shutdown, it's still happening. We're like coming up on almost a month now. Now I'm hearing that air traffic controllers over the next week are most likely, going to be not available because they're not getting paid, because that is through obviously the federal government. We're also seeing that TSA workers have gone the last 2 weeks. They have not collected a paycheck, supposedly. I guess the first week they got half of a paycheck. The next week that they were supposed to get paid, they didn't get paid. They're supposed to be getting paid this week. They're not getting paid. Say what you want about TSA. I know it can be a pain in the butt dealing with that, but this is all that connection to Sagittarius. It's connections to airports and international travel. Mercury can be things that are connecting to like technology and communications and telecoms, all that stuff. So if Mercury is getting ready to turn retrograde, it's opposing Uranus, we're going to see some communication breakdowns, potentially creating some very seriously dangerous situations for people to be flying, or lack of travel altogether. If we don't have air traffic controllers, we're not going to have planes in the sky. It is going to create a huge pileup and a delay for people being able to get around, especially considering Mercury is going to station retrograde at 6 degrees, so it deals with the workers. Obviously, the workers aren't getting paid. At some point, it's only a matter of time until people start calling in. What's going to happen? Now, Mercury is in shadow, so I think that's part of the buildup of what's been happening over the next couple of weeks. I'm optimistic that perhaps, a retrograde, maybe, it can bring to the table a renegotiation. We can figure out a way forward. But also, I think that if we're dealing with not having adequate people who are managing some of these things involving travel, it's potentially creating some serious mishaps. So from October 21st on, we actually started the Mercury retrograde shadow, and it started in Scorpio. So it's going to be traveling all the way up to 6 of Sag. It's going to revisit, obviously, Scorpio in the retrograde. And this period over the next week, it's foreshadowing some of the miscommunications and adjustments. So you have to really pay attention to details in contracts, legal contracts, applying for schools, purchasing travel. I keep telling everybody, be very careful with travel. Like, a lot of people are going to find out that there's going to be major delays, or they're going to be trying to get refunds on travel, or they're going to, need to kind of try to get reimbursed. So if you guys need to do that, like, plan accordingly. Try to make most of your travel plans outside of, the Mercury-Uranus opposition, and also ideally before the 9th of November. And travel will get better after mid-December, so I think it's going to be a little bit easier to navigate around Christmas and New Year's. I think it's going to be most problematic actually around the end of October through the beginning of December. So, that's what's going to happen. You guys are going to have to really double and triple check any accommodations and make sure that you kind of have a plan B. Now, Jupiter is the dispositor, so Jupiter is the ruler of Mercury while it's going through this sign. And basically between now and around the 11th of November, Jupiter is direct in Cancer. So it's exalted here. It rules what's going on with Mercury. Jupiter does make things bigger. And obviously it's kind of coloring the Mercury and Sagittarius transit in a much more emotional kind of sense. It's intuitive, it deals with family matters, and it's also about protective and nurturing instincts. So the dispositor here kind of softens some of the Sagittarius fire with sensitivity, making communications more heartfelt and home-focused, but potentially it brings up some moodiness. So we do have some support with Jupiter direct, at least until around the 11th, when it turns retrograde as well. To best work with this transit, I think what I love about Mercury and Sag is that it's very curious. It has a love for other places, other cultures. It has an open mind. It loves to read, travel, and discuss philosophy. So it can be a really good time to really journal about big ideas, but make sure that you guys are doing your fact checking. Definitely practice mindful speech and avoid bluntness when at all possible, because we can be blurting out things or talking about our beliefs and then realize that we don't have the facts straight. And it's a really good time to use affirmations for optimism and really try to ground our energy out the best that we can to balance out some of that debilitation. Now, globally, I think that we're going to see shifts in international news. Mercury is news and media, journalists, and then obviously Sagittarius is going to be kind of on an international level. We may see a bit of back and forth with educational policies or religious debates, and there is potential for inspiring speeches or like media surprises. There's definitely going to be more on the topic of international trade debates, definitely tariff drama, which has thrown all of us for a bit of a tailspin over the last several weeks. And like I said, travel crisis, and something that's coming up revolving around media coverage with college campuses. So I'm wondering, is it going to be protests? Is it going to be scandals? And surprising changes involving legal matters or potentially even revision of Supreme Court decisions. Now, personally, I think that this is a mental reset when it comes to our own personal freedom and growth. It is about reevaluating our own personal beliefs and opportunities for learning or adventures that align with our soul's path. I also feel like we will have this sense of, at least briefly until it turns retrograde on the 9th, where there is this lift in mental energy. It's been very heavy in Scorpio. It's been very emotional. It's been very tense, conjunct Mars. So many of us are going to find that we are feeling lighter and we're craving stimulation through books, podcasts, or trips. And communication can also become a little bit more candid, and this can really foster communications, but there is this risk of misunderstanding. So if it's hitting your chart strongly, like conjunct an angle or a personal planet, expect major revelations relating to those houses. And well, I'll go through them at the end so that way you guys can see where this is going to be taking place. Now, I am going to show you guys the dates that I think are going to be most important during Mercury's first kind of like jaunt through Sagittarius all the way up until the retrograde. And then you guys can watch that other video for that. Some of this will go beyond the weekly astrology that I'm going to be talking about today. So just a heads up. But on the 29th, this is when Mercury first enters into Sagittarius. And when it does, and it hits that 0 degrees, it's immediately starting to come into an opposition with Uranus that morning. So if you've got any travel or legal related things or anything revolving around planning trips, or, you know, if you're expecting some unexpected news, maybe this is the time that I think we're going to see it. Mercury is also sextiling Pluto in Aquarius, as well as the transit Aquarius moon. And that is going to be fresh for sure, because we've got Mercury direct, you know, Uranus retrograde, Jupiter direct. So as Mercury enters into Sagittarius for the first time, something that I was thinking about, I'm pretty sure we had a Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius last year. I think it was the fall of last year. So obviously we're not going to have all the planets in the same places. Saturn and Neptune were there last year. The nodes weren't. Uranus wasn't in Gemini, but you may see some of the same themes that happened in the fall of 2024. So kind of go and backtrack and think about what happened during that retrograde. And in the morning on the 29th, this is initiating the phase of, you know, that expansive kind of truth-seeking communication. Great for starting studies or journeys, but the shadow warns of some of the future tweaks that are coming up. That opposition to Uranus and Gemini is going to be interesting. That'll be the morning of the 29th. Yes, Mercury-Uranus oppositions can spark kind of innovative new ideas, but likely it's going to be more rebelliousness, sudden changes of plans that are going to happen. It does amplify unpredictability in tech, travel, and debates, and this is really about embracing breakthroughs, but pre-shadow means we have to avoid acting or saying or doing things impulsively. Now, then on the 30th, the very next day, we are going to see Uranus come into, we're going to see Mercury come into a sextile with Pluto. So now that sextile is exact. And that is going to be happening in the morning. Obviously, Pluto empowers, right? So it brings like deep transformative conversations, and it's great for research and also influencing groups of people in Aquarius. This is also about uncovering hidden truths with ease. Still pretty intense with the first quarter square moon, but we'll see what happens. We get a little bit of a break until the 9th, and on the 9th, this is when Mercury is going to start its retrograde motion in Sag, and it'll turn retrograde at 6 degrees. This is important because this is the degree which it will kind of come back to in December and then leave the shadow. It's also the same degree where Mercury and Mars are going to meet, right? So very interesting that Mercury is meeting with Mars several times, but the Mercury retrograde starts in the afternoon hours of the 10th. So you guys, of the 10th, the 9th, the 10th? Hold on a second, let me double check this. I want to make sure I'm right, because one thing says the 9th, and one thing says the 10th. This is a Mercury retrograde moment in itself. Double check what we're going to say. There we go. No, it's going to be the 9th, I was right. So it's going to be the 9th that we're going to see the Mercury retrograde begin. But it will be at 6 degrees, and then you guys will see that that is the same degree that Mercury and Mars will conjunct at. So this is where we start to see some of the travel mishaps, the communication challenges. I'm curious to see what happens because the moon is going to be coming into conjunction with Jupiter, and like one's exalted and one's in its domicile, which is great. It's also trining the sun, great. It's also trining the North Node. Like I feel like the beginning of the Mercury retrograde is really not entirely that bad. I think it was a little bit more gnarly in Scorpio. I don't know, you guys let me know. But when this starts, this is when we start to see, oh, things are slowing down. There are delays, stuff's breaking down. And this is really slowing down because Mercury is turning inward, and it's about reassessing optimism versus reality. So it's really going to show us like where we have overcommitted ourselves, or we've been overly optimistic, or maybe we are not looking at some of the bigger picture ideas that's going on in the Sagittarius area of our chart. Now, we will see the Mercury-Mars conjunction taking place on the 12th. This is the second time that this happens, obviously now in a different sign, but it is going to be the second time throughout the retrograde process. So let's look at that. There we go. And on the 12th in the evening, Mercury and Mars are going to conjunct. And look at, there's a square happening from the moon. So there is going to be some issues revolving around like, yeah, I think it'll be TSA. I think it'll be maybe potentially issues with, could be, I wonder, is there going to be like teachers union strikes? Are we going to see some kind of issues revolving around the news of major layoffs and people losing jobs, funding, you know, revolving around government jobs and positions? We'll see, but 6s deal with Virgo, so there's definitely going to be new health news coming up, new scheduling and travel plans going up. It can be that they're reinstating and bringing people back, so God forbid we have to go until, you know, mid-November where we have the shutdown. It is possible that there is going to be more pressure to bring some of these people back. Now, when that happens, you know, Mars is a little spicy. Go back to what happened in the end of October where we had Mercury and Mars conjunct. Now it's happening again, but it's happening in Sagittarius. Mercury and Mars conjunct is known for being passionate, known for having a big mouth, and obviously feeling very motivated by ideas, but arguments come with the Mercury-Mars conjunction. So review some of the themes that happened in October. Know that Sag is a little bit, it's harder for Mercury and Sag to keep its mouth shut than Scorpio. Scorpio is kind of like strategic in how it's going to be navigating things, and it's definitely been kind of dealing with emotions on a deeper level. Fire cannot be contained. So we're going to see, I think, around the 12th, this is when there can be, you know, a lot more boldness and intensity and some conflict that's getting kind of kicked up. Then again, on the 17th, we will see Mercury come back into a sextile with Pluto and Aquarius, bringing up some of those themes revolving around, you know, communicating with groups, speaking to groups of people, themes revolving around, you know, inspiring others. But the other side of this is that it's getting a second chance at like transformative insights. And it's about revisiting power dynamics or secrets that were kind of coming up since the end of October. This is leading to better breakthroughs and understanding. Then on the 18th of the month, we are going to see Mercury drop back down into Scorpio, and it's going to continue its you know, retrograde in this sign. We'll still have to oppose Uranus again, so we're going to see some shakeups, and then we're going to see a really rare and unusual new moon on November 19th. That's going to be happening in the late degrees of Scorpio with a Mercury cazimi. So that's going to be a really, really interesting new moon to kind of look at. For right now, this is just to kind of get you guys through. Something else that I was kind of thinking about also with like the Mercury sextile Pluto is like, you know, once again, not getting political, but you're hearing a lot of stuff about what's been going on with funding revolving around protests and people who are getting like organized and doing demonstrations, and like Pluto in Aquarius is power to the people, but Pluto is also about conflict. It's about, you know, dangerous situations. It can be about dark money. It can be about manipulation, crime. So likely we're going to be hearing a lot more about legal statements, situations, actions that's being taken revolving around where groups are getting together and doing some dark things. Been really interesting this week, right? We saw that there was the NBA, you know, kind of, I guess, arrests. I think there was like 30 people associated with the NBA that got arrested, potentially for like manipulating games, faking injuries, all kinds of things is what they're alluding to them being involved in, and that it was kind of incentivizing people to know which direction games were going to go in, associated with betting, right? So that could be a lot of like the news and the information coming out legally about what groups of people are doing that's illegal or kind of crime related. We also heard about like a poker, I think like ring or whatever that got busted for people who were cheating in poker games, and there was like illegal poker games going on, and Pluto deals with X-ray, and I saw things about this where they were saying that they had like certain glasses on where they could actually see the cards, and they had marked cards. That's very Pluto, and they were manipulating like games, and so that's kind of coming up obviously legally. What else did we hear? Supposedly there's like, P. Diddy's in the news again for some kind of attack that happened in his cell. There's a possibility that we're going to see some reevaluations going on in the Supreme Court level about same-sex marriage in the next month. All of these things, right, where you're going to hear a lot of public debate or a lot of things in the news revolving around legal situations or what is and is not considered legal is going to be riling people up. We heard about Letitia James and James Comey that are pushing back against the courts, saying that whoever was appointed to run that particular district court, apparently their deeming is not like legal, like they weren't appointed in a legal fashion. I think they had somebody that was in those court positions for like 100 and so many days, and then they had to elect somebody new. So because they're pushing back against some of their legal cases, which they're alleging that they have committed treason or fraud, now they're trying to overturn it. So you're going to hear a lot of things about things in the court or the justice system potentially being overturned. Shocks and surprises as opposes Uranus in Gemini, so it's going to be all over the news, and sextiling Pluto in Aquarius, which is definitely going to rile the people up. The only thing I really give a shit about during these particular retrogrades is with Mercury retrograde is going to be about where there are some things that are unsavory, unhealthy, or not helpful when it comes to our systems, and where money is being internationally funneled in to the justice system, to certain courts, where judges are being paid off, where we're seeing certain things that are being manipulated, where people aren't doing their job. And also they're incentivizing or funding some of these movements or protests. Say what you want about it, go follow the money. I don't really care, but I'm very confident that we're going to see a lot of facts and information and data where we're starting to see like what's going on with some of these protests and like where the money is coming from and where they're getting the money to create the signs and put all that stuff out. And also what is influencing, I think, that the courts. It doesn't matter what court it is, but there's going to be a lot of finding out, I think, about influence that's coming from other countries like Mercury and Sag, and the funding from that, among other things. But it's definitely all impacting politics because of the sextile to Pluto and Aquarius. So we'll follow it. We'll talk about it next week. We'll see what comes up. I'd love to hear your guys' feedback on that. And we're going to get right into the week ahead. We're going to talk about October 26th through November the 2nd. So let's scan ahead here and go to the 26th. And if you guys are watching on Sunday, happy Sunday. I hope it's a good one for you guys, to my Sunday crew. We are waking up on October 26th, and the moon is actually in Sagittarius briefly in the morning. How are you guys doing with that transit? First thing this morning, the moon starts coming into a square with Saturn and Neptune. Ouch. Maybe some weather changes. Maybe there's some kind of feeling a little too overly optimistic. Maybe we're hitting some emotional blocks, or we're feeling a little emotionally drained or confused. Obviously, seeing those squares gets a little dicey, at least until the moon enters Capricorn midday. I think the key transit to be really watching is that not only will the moon come into a square with Saturn and Neptune, which creates some emotional confusion, but it's also in conjunct or quincunx Jupiter. So it's like the moon in Sagittarius is like, I want to go out, I want to do things. And then Jupiter in Cancer is like, no, let's like stay inside, or like, let's stay, somewhere safe or comfortable. So there is a little bit of like emotional kind of confusion or some blockages revolving around which direction we go in on Sunday. I think that's going to be key, especially because that moon is going to hit 29 degrees. And then it's going to hit Neptune at 29 degrees. So there's some fogginess pretty much all the way up until, the late morning. I'm Central Time. So it's going to start to kind of change when the moon goes into Capricorn midday. I anticipate a lot of people are going to be like, well, there's weather stuff going on, or, you know, we need to sleep in, or we don't really know what the plan is. And we're just kind of vibing out until we get halfway through the day on Sunday, the 26th. Now, I think that at least when the moon goes into Capricorn, not the easiest transit, because Capricorn is going to be more about government. It's more about work. It's more about responsibility. I would say emotional labor. And now Saturn's back in Pisces, and it's retrograde conjunct Neptune. So there's a lot of people who are literally dealing with a reevaluation or a reassessment regarding their goals, their dreams, their spiritual beliefs. Maybe they are also, you know, concerned, worried, anxious, you know, Saturn retrograde, about the future of their career, their work, their reputation. Like, I remember telling a lot of people, and I was saying this in the spring of this year, I was like, the job market's going to get really rough at the end of the year. And we're also going to see a lot of people, whether it's connected to government jobs or just like tech jobs, that things are going to start to kind of taper. The key here, I think, is that when the moon goes into Capricorn, there is a sense of coming to terms with or making peace with, this is not working. And part of like being a boss in Capricorn land is kind of going, all right, this isn't supporting me in the long term, or this isn't sustainable, or, you know, I'm hitting a wall here. And Saturn in Pisces is saying sometimes we need rest. It's not just about all work. Sometimes we need a vision or a dream, or we need to feel inspired, or we need some kind of spiritual or even like religious guidance. So we have to tap into that inner knowing on the second half of Sunday, and we have to really kind of focus on what can we get done? What is possible? At least that moon is going to start coming into a sextile with the sun. So this is like the first nice aspect that we're going to see where things begin to flow. And Capricorn and Scorpio are all about control. It's all about planning, power, you know, long-term related things. So I think that as we get into Sunday night, we feel like we're really hitting our stride and we can get a lot of work in order. So whether you're food prepping or you're confirming appointments or you're, you know, kind of planning things for your week, try to be productive and get things in order if you can on Sunday night. For most of the day, I would say in the morning, things are kind of like, they're dreamy with the moon squaring Neptune, but also there's like a sense of restriction. It's like, I'd love to be doing this, but I can't. And we're going to feel a little blocked. But as we get into the midday and the moon goes into Capricorn, it's going to help us feel more grounded and more ambitious. Those illusions that were coming up early Sunday morning start to dissolve into like a much more practical focus. And then there's this beautiful emotional depth that comes from the sun sextile the moon. So Sunday's astrology is like in the morning, we have escapist tendencies. Maybe we're sleeping in, maybe we're in bed watching TV, maybe we are, you know, recovering from a hangover. There can be a sense of feeling kind of gloomy because we wake up and the weather is kind of limiting us to do what we want to do. Just take your time, like sit with your emotions on Sunday morning, and then find that as we are shifting into later in the day, if we have been meditating and clarifying our visions, we can then tackle more actually as we get into the evening. So use that Capricorn moon for productivity, especially when it comes to some of your personal goals. Then we are going to see, as we continue moving forward into Monday, we will wake up Monday morning and the moon's still moving through Capricorn. Things get a little tricky with the moon and Capricorn transits, because if you look here, moon's going to be going through this sign. It's going to square Chiron. It's going to square Jupiter. It's going to square Venus. So there's a little bit of like trickiness Monday and Tuesday for the cardinal signs, particularly I would say about maybe 15 to about 26, 27 degrees. You guys are going to be feeling the effects of the cardinal squares that's coming up with the moon. But on Monday, the moon in Capricorn is making some pretty nice aspects. It's going to come into a sextile with the north node in Pisces. It's going to then also come into a trine with the south node in Virgo. And we will also see the moon then come into a square with Libra. That's a little sticky, especially if we've got Jupiter in its exaltation and Venus in its home sign. The Capricorn moon feels like, you know, Monday morning, we're putting work before everything. We're putting work before emotions. We're putting work before relationships. We're putting work before our own healing and our own wounds. It's not fun, but I think the positive is that we do have Mercury that's going to be making some nice aspects. We have Mercury that is still coming off of that trine with Saturn, which we saw like Saturday, Sunday, Monday, which does lead to clear, concise, long-term commitments and communication. We are also going to see on Monday that it's starting to kind of build into a trine with, Mars is starting to build into a trine with Jupiter. So we're going to feel our energies kind of amping up a little bit. Nevertheless, it is what it is. And I think as we get through the day, things get a little bit more tricky. So that Capricorn moon makes us think about long-term commitments, work, responsibility, dealing with bosses, all that stuff. And throughout the day, it's building into a square with Venus. So around 10 p.m. Central Time in the evening is where things get a little sticky because you're going to see that moon square. Venus in Libra wants partnership, togetherness, it wants diplomacy, it wants balance, it wants to make a deal. Capricorn moon is saying, I don't know about that, it's going to take time, or, I am having to really think about the long-term kind of emotional impacts and effects. And Capricorn is government, so I'm like looking at this going like, all right, and once again, not to politic, but at the end of the month, like starting November 1st, like there is no more EBT. They're telling people that, hey, guess what? Your food stamps and the WIC programs and things like that for some people are essentially running out. And you're also going to be hearing more about how this is impacting, federal workers. This is all tying back to Mercury things, Mercury and Mars, people getting agitated and kind of confrontational about what's going on with money and food, understandably. But I think the pressure is really on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, as the moon starts coming into a square with Venus, because people are like, hey, let's make a deal, or can we work together and see if we can reopen this? And then the moon's going to start coming into an opposition with Jupiter. It's going to start making the feelings of all of this stuff feel even bigger, right? Oof. So on Monday, the key transit is really, I think, Mercury starting to come in out of a square with Saturn, starting to come into a trine with Neptune, where look, guys, I know this is emotional. I'm hearing it from clients all over. I mean, maybe I sound insensitive, but I've got Mercury and Scorpio trine Jupiter, so I'm used to this energy. But I look at this and I'm like, the inspirational side of at least my work, or my educational kind of like angle from my work, stems from Mercury and Scorpio. Hard truths, driven facts, research, information, uncovering things that are really direct in between the eyes. And I think that with Saturn and Neptune back in Pisces, we're seeing a lot of victim mentality, a lot of why aren't they helping? Why aren't people giving us this? Why isn't, this working for me? And people being like, well, this just is the way that it is. And unfortunately, when Saturn and Neptune go back into Aries next year, it's going to be a really difficult time for people who are immigrants. It's going to be really difficult for people who are also in the military. It's going to be difficult for people who want to live off the system. It's going to be really difficult also for people who are homeless or people who are kind of like down and out. Now, I do think it will create new systems and we will see new support, but planets at the late degrees of Pisces are when things are wrapping up, and you're going to see people get very emotional, very intense. And there's a lot of media too that's driving this, right? Mercury can be media. So Mercury conjunct Mars and Scorpio is why you're seeing all these TikToks of people melting down, being like, I need to get my EBT. Why am I not being paid? What's happening? This needs to be taken care of. And like, I see both sides of the situation. I'm not going to give my personal opinion on it, but I am going to tell you that Saturn represents government and Saturn is retrograde. So you have people that knowingly are going, yeah, if we continue to not make a deal, keep everything closed. And we see people suffer, Saturn and Neptune and Pisces, especially people who are lower income, people who are immigrants, people who are single parents. They are then calling for the churches to step in, Pisces, and say, hey, you have to feed the homeless and the poor. Sure, of course, and that's what they say. But these trines to Mercury and Mars is instigating conflict, violence, anger, people who are acting in scarcity mindset. That could be very much Scorpio, the lower vibe of Scorpio. And it's like a setup for some pretty nasty stuff. And I'm convinced that some of the stuff that's kind of going through here with the trines to Neptune at 29 degrees is like propaganda. I think you have some people that are being incentivized to go out there and be part of protests, or they're being paid to create content and other things, trying to get people to kind of get riled up. And you're also going to hear more news, which we don't know if it's true or false, revolving around like military mobilization. So when you hear people talking about the National Guard, or, federalizing police, or things that are going to be kind of going on with dealing with like ICE, agents. This is all very much all that kind of Scorpio stuff. So I don't know what we can really believe. We can't believe much while Saturn and Neptune are in Pisces, and we certainly can't believe a lot when Mercury is in Sagittarius in shadow. So I think a lot of people are going to get riled up thinking things are going to happen. And I just want to tell you guys, like, keep your cool, check your facts. Don't go off of what somebody's saying on a TikTok video and just assume, well, they're doing it, so I'm going to do it. Because there's going to be some legal repercussions for a lot of people if they're just kind of going along with the crowd. Now, on Monday, you know, thank God the Capricorn moon is structured and it's making aspects to the North Node and it's building into a sextile with Saturn. But we are going to see some karmic nudges towards destiny. There is relational tensions that are arising with moon square, you know, Venus. Venus is support, love, harmony, and nourishment. And the moon is about, you know, it's broken down here basically when it's in Capricorn. It's like tough love and emotional kind of like restriction and people not really feeling supported by those who quote unquote should support. But once again, Saturn retrograde conjunct Neptune retrograde is ruling this moon. You've got people who are sitting around being like, yeah, we're just going to let this happen and we're going to see what happens because it's going to create some like, you know, chaos or some conflict. And like people who, they don't have to worry about paying their bills. If the government shut down, they're still getting paid. You know, people who don't have to worry about whether or not they're going to eat. They don't have to wonder where their next meal is kind of coming from. So it's interesting to see this happen because it's really heartbreaking. And I feel like a lot of people are going to kind of fall into the media narrative of, it's one side that created this, or, you know, it's one person's fault, or this is one person who won't play ball. When the bigger picture is we've created a system, Mercury, where all these people are reliant and dependent on it. And now we have a situation where we're trying to kind of pull back. And even if there weren't a shutdown, where if we were trying to scale back because of the spending and expenses, you've got a lot of people who are now very protective of what they have. And so it's not going to be an easy thing to kind of get out of. So, you know, Monday to me, thankfully, yes, it feels structured. We'll see some tensions arise, but it can inspire compassionate insights. And we can see that it can be kind of striking a chord with some people where they're like, okay, I need to actually step up and I need to do more. I'm hoping, right? Touch wood. So now we continue to move into the 28th. And in the morning, the moon is still in Capricorn. Things get kind of spicy on Tuesday morning because we see the moon move through Capricorn, come into an opposition with Jupiter, which is in its home, it's in its exaltation, so it's going to make things feel bigger. Cancer is like women, mothers, home, family. Capricorn is government, you know, leaders, things revolving around elders. And then the Chiron is the meat of the square, the T-square here, which is like the impact on individuals, where individuals, Chiron at 24 retrograde, individuals are suffering or they're dealing with health issues, they're dealing with ailments, they're not getting support, they're feeling isolated, wounded, angry, you know, resentful, some of the lower energies of like a Mars sign. And the moon is also still kind of squaring Venus. So you're going to see this is like the, I guess, like the prelude to Venus starting to come into an opposition with Chiron and squaring Jupiter. And Jupiter does make any situation bigger. It doesn't mean it's better. It just makes it bigger. So that Capricorn moon in opposition to Jupiter, once again, pressure is on. Why? Because individuals. Well, it's not just are the TSA people getting paid or are, you know, people getting their food stamps or their like WIC programs. It's also the military, guys. So the military, somebody stepped in. I guess there was like an anonymous donor that donated millions of dollars, like I think over $100 million or something, to make sure that military personnel got paid. But that's only going to be for the next paycheck for military for like the entire country. So I'm looking at this going, all right, well, you know, maybe they're able to pull, you know, resources from other programs to get people food. Maybe they are able to, you know, get donations from wealthy donors to pay the military. But we're still on borrowed time. And so the reality is that the pressure's on because a lot of these things are coming to an end literally come the beginning of November. So this is not a fun square. That square is pretty much going to be in the air from, let's say, about 8 a.m. Central Time on Tuesday. The exact square between Jupiter, Chiron, and the moon is going to be around noon on Tuesday. Saturn's connected to that. It's retrograde. Mars is connected to that. It's in conjunct Chiron. Moon's conjuncted to that, and it's in opposition. 23, 24, and 25 degrees are the cardinal signs. Hold on to your shorts on Tuesday. That's not fun. 24 is about things that are becoming dissolved or isolating or things that are kind of going missing. I mean, it does deal with international relationships. It does deal with pharmaceuticals. I'm going to read to you guys the degree theory. A lot of people have been asking me about this book. It's out of print, as far as I know, unfortunately. I've had this book for a while. So maybe you're able to find it online somewhere, but unfortunately, I have not been able to find it. If you guys know where you can find them, please let me know. So 12 and 24 always deal with Pisces, okay? So the moon's connected to that, Chiron's connected to that, Jupiter's connected to that. And look at what's in Pisces: North Node, Saturn, and Neptune, okay? It's all there. So it's talking about things starting to break down, fall apart, dissolve. Saturn doesn't have a lot of structure right now. Things that disappear, okay? Losses, things that are secret or unexplored or secretive. Fears, phobias, psychiatrists, diseases, hospitals, doctors, things that are invisible, medications, pharmacy, isolated places, monasteries, religious or divine nature, hotels, things at night, errors, oil, gas, gasoline, drugs, photography, things that are false or insincere or counterfeit, vague, foggy, research lab, things at sea, drowning, poisons, godparents, and to run away. I keep hearing all this stuff about that planet that they're saying is going to get really close. And there's a lot of people talking about stuff on like X and stuff where they're like, there's going to be this alien encounter. We're going to see this ship that's going to land on the ocean. I know I sound crazy, but this is what people are saying, that there's going to be these aliens that are going to be on the ocean, and it's going to be like around like the 28th or the 29th or the 30th of October. And I'm like, eh. But then I'm like, wait a second. 24, 24, 24. This is sextiling Saturn and also Neptune, which is about unveiling things that are hidden, that deals with the oceans. And by the way, Neptune deals more with aliens than Uranus does. Is it possible? I mean, I think anything goes on the 2025 bingo card. I feel like every year has just gotten increasingly like crazier and crazier. Is there going to be something that is like, you know, like falsified, or something that is like conspiracy-esque, or things that are manipulated or generated or projected that, you know, I mean, maybe, once again, I know I sound crazy saying this, but I had to kind of like address that because everybody's talking about this like Atlas planet. So we'll see what happens if the aliens arrive this week. It wouldn't surprise me. Whether or not it's true, I don't know, we'll see. On the rest of the 28th, you're going to see that there will be a moon sextile Mars and Mercury. And look at Mercury coming in for the trine with Neptune. Look at Mars coming in for the trine with Saturn. I like this kind of grand water trine between Saturn, Mars, and Jupiter, especially because Jupiter and Mars is so strong, but Saturn is retrograde. There's always something. So it's a good like dealing with crisis, getting stuff in order, you know, managing things, kind of cleaning up type of day on the 28th. The Mars in Scorpio trine Jupiter in Cancer is a lot of guts. It's a lot of confidence. It's a lot of emotional willpower. I like that. Tuesday to me feels very expansive. Like there's a lot of emotional drive with the water trines, and also the aspects to, you know, the Scorpio planets, and also the moon in Capricorn. Lots of emotional drive meets intense motivation. Opportunities for abundance in home or family matters is possible with these trines to Jupiter, but the Capricorn moon in opposition square Chiron makes me feel like it might be right in the nick of time. Watch for overextending yourself on Tuesday. Now, to navigate Tuesday, I would say channel the passion that's kind of coming up this day into nurturing projects, right? This is the Mars trine Jupiter. This is also about listening to your intuition, your dreams, your guts, you know. I feel like Scorpio so much deals with like fear and overcoming fear, and like the retrogrades are going to be about getting to the bottom of those things, physically, emotionally, in terms of intimacy, finances, whatever, and recognizing that it's not so much that it's fear of change, it's that in order to initiate some kind of change throughout this cycle, we have to come to terms with like the fact that we're on our own, right? Saturn and Neptune retrograde in Pisces is like a lot of people are running around crazy going, what are we going to do? The world's going to end, you know? And like that reaction does not necessarily create the vibe or the, I guess, set the stage for a vibration that makes us feel in control, makes us feel out of control. And if we're feeding off of that, then there's going to be more conflict and fear and people kind of reacting, rather than being like, yeah, you know what, this is difficult and we have to kind of purge all of this stuff out and get to the bottom of what's been bothering us or what's not working, or what the problem is, And maybe the end result is, yeah, something's got to go and we have to completely rework something from the ground up, and we're going to have to do it on our own because nobody's going to come to save us. Once again, more kind of Mercury, Mars between the eyes, truth. But that's the name of the game, is like, can you pull yourself up by the bootstraps on Tuesday? That is going to be the question. So channel it into nurturing projects. Try to balance some of the opposition that is coming up by setting emotional boundaries. And it's great for like bold, heartfelt actions. Now you will see middays when that T-square between the moon, Chiron, and Jupiter is the most intense. And then we're going to have the moon continue to keep moving forward. And it looks like right in the evening, kind of overnight hours, the moon is going to shift into Aquarius. So if you're a night owl, you're going to see really late on the 28th on Tuesday, the moon-Pluto conjunction in Aquarius, trining Uranus in Gemini. So I'm kind of like, is there going to be some like late night decisions and kind of like commitments and things changing? Certainly when the moon goes into Aquarius, we're looking at Uranus and it's trining Uranus, so that's helpful, but that's going to bring out some late breaking kind of news, I think, overnight going into the 29th, right? Now, as we see the moon in Aquarius continue, we're coming into the first quarter square. So if you're up late at night on Tuesday, you may be feeling the pressure from this most recent new moon in Libra. This is the opening square to the sun in Scorpio, and that's going to be kicking in first thing in the morning on the 29th. So this will now be Wednesday. Moon still conjunct Pluto early in the morning, so the intensity, the conflict, the people who are going to be emotionally purging and detoxing some of the kind of chaos that you're seeing that's happening out in the world, and people are kind of spinning out. It does sextile Mercury, which is now in Sagittarius. So there's going to be a lot of news about what's going on with the Sagittarius topics, travel, education, legal matters. And also it's coming into a square with the sun in Scorpio. Okay, so fun fact, Scorpio and Pluto, they both deal with mafia, crime, underground things, things that are exposed, stuff that deals with the three-letter agencies, things connected to, anything that's like hidden and kind of shadowy in nature. So when the moon Pluto come together and they square the sun, I think it's going to be more kind of like truth bombs revolving around funding and expenses and where money is funneling into things and out of things. And the sun does deal with gambling. It does deal with leaders. It does deal with sports stars. It does deal with all that stuff. And certainly this is a day to kind of watch if there is a big dramatic shock and surprise that has come up revolving around like a leader or some kind of like money or funding operation. Now, aside from that, the other thing that we're seeing is now Mercury is opposing Uranus. So that in itself is bringing shocking and surprising news. So not only does the moon trine Uranus, but also it's sextiling Mercury, which is opposing it. Wow, wow, wow. That to me kind of feels like on the 29th that factored in with the moon square. And I was posting about this on Twitter. I was like, Scorpio season like kicked off with a bang. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but the sun was coming into square Pluto. We saw Mercury, Mars, and Lilith all in Scorpio. All of these kind of like Pluto conjunctions, Pluto squares, like Mercury retrograde back into Scorpio. Like it's going to be a whole month of November of unraveling some of this stuff. Positive is that, it needs to purge and purify to get all of the truth out. I think a lot of this is going to be about where people are coming together. So it could be Congress, Senate, politicians, whatever, trying to work on funding related issues. And if you guys go and do your homework, you're going to realize that that's what a lot of the holdup is. It's not one party versus another party. That's what they want you to think. It's funding issues. They have to come to an agreement about funding issues before they move forward. And also, fun fact, and this is more maybe my conspiracy mind, but having done some research about some of this stuff, there are some strong ties and correlations to what's going on with insurance companies, what's going on with healthcare in America, legislation and things that are supposed to be put forward because there is a lot of lobbying that's going on with certain politicians and major kind of healthcare companies. And whether or not they're going to continue to kind of keep getting paid next year. We're seeing all these like insurance premiums going through the roof. So Scorpio is insurance, right? And then we deal with obviously Aquarius, which deals with politics. Traditional ruler Saturn, and Saturn and Neptune are retrograde in Pisces.
like it or not, a lot of what's going on right now is there is some breakdown going on with the government, not just because they can't come to an agreement with funding, but because there's major things that are going to be changing going into this next year, revolving around lobbying, especially involving foreign countries, that's Pisces, especially involving certain religious groups, that's Pisces, especially involving anything connecting to hospitals or pharmaceuticals, Pisces, right? Really the real villain right now, I think, is Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. And that we are seeing the impacts of where all of this stuff is impacting us emotionally and on the home front, whether that's what you're paying for your cost of living, how much it takes to get groceries, what your taxes are, all that stuff. So there's a lot of things here where it's like we're seeing a lot of slowdown, Saturn retrograde, of leadership, and people who are either, too old to be able to really pay attention or really care what their constituents want or think, or people who are so heavily invested in covering their secrets or getting their money from foreign lobbies that they're like, we're just not going to do anything. And everybody still wants to say which side it is, but really it's going on both sides, unfortunately. So, I can't wait until we get through November. We can start to kind of really see the paper trail, kind of see why certain things are becoming issues and why there are holdups and why there are delays and the financial connections to some of these things. So on Wednesday, as we start the morning, there's drama. There's no way around it. Mercury opposed Uranus is unexpected news, travel issues. Moon conjunct Pluto is definitely going to be some crisis and some drama for us collectively. And it's hashing out and bringing out some issues revolving around Scorpio themes. So what you want to watch for, though, is that now Mars in Scorpio is coming into a trine with Saturn. So we have a couple of days of like feeling optimistic, trine Jupiter, feeling structured, trine Saturn. Thank God. That's the only thing that's holding this together. That's it. And by the way, P.S., there's no planets in Earth signs, right? So we've got all of this water that's running rampant where everybody's emotional. And we've got all of this air and fire that's just kind of like boom, boom, boom. Things are happening very quickly. Like there's nothing grounding things out. As difficult as the Capricorn moon transit was the first couple days, that was the only thing that was keeping us grounded. So I personally would not want to be booking flights on the 29th. I would not want to be traveling. I would be careful driving. I wouldn't be starting lawsuits. I would be really mindful of changes going on with education. There's going to be some really dramatic kind of weather news maybe that's coming up here too. And we will see the Mercury Uranus opposition, and it looks like that's going to happen, let's see, 0:22. So that's going to happen around 3 o'clock p.m. Central Time. Just with Jupiter and all of that being in the mix, I'm not crazy about it, but we'll see what happens. But watch the news. You guys have watched Astro Weather long enough to know that I'm like, this time, this day, these are the topics, this is what's going to hit. And hopefully you guys aren't flying. And if you are, get there early. Make sure you have baggage check. All right, so this is now going to take us to the end of the 29th. So the daily vibe is revolutionary with the moon in Aquarius, very transformative, conjunct Pluto. Mercury enters Sagittarius, immediately opposes Uranus and Gemini. Sudden shifts in thinking, sparking innovation. Thankfully, there is some discipline energy for change, but it's the first quarter square, so we have to roll with the punches. So to navigate Wednesday, embrace the surprises, right? Like if that's one thing I have learned about Uranus oppositions is that they're not always crisis related. Sometimes it's like, oh, I didn't think of that, or I didn't realize that, or like there's a way out. And we'll get that opposition several times throughout the retrograde. Journal, maybe insights that come up for you that day. If you have kind of like ideas that pop up, use some of the trines that's going on between Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn to your advantage. And this is really for steady progress towards your emotional ambitions. Still avoid rash decisions, okay? All right, so this is going to take us into Thursday the 30th. And we wake up on Thursday. The moon is still in Aquarius. And it is starting to come into a trine with Venus. I like that. It is also starting to come into a square with Mars and Scorpio, which will be later in the day, so that's not going to be too difficult. We will see the moon come into a sextile with Chiron and Aries, so that's good for community kind of networking, togetherness, and healing. And we are also going to see that moon square Mars late in the evening. There's no real key transit. Nothing's really going on. I mean, Mars and Jupiter, and Saturn and Neptune are still in that trine. I would probably watch for the better relational aspects when the moon comes into a trine with Venus, because it's good for like parties, gatherings, lunches, meetings, sending out social blasts, that kind of stuff. That's going to be around the early afternoon, 1 p.m. Central. And then by the time you're getting later in the evening, we are going to see then the moon start squaring Mars, and that is a little bit more combative. But remember, when the moon's in Uranus, the moon's in Aquarius, we're looking at Uranus, and Mercury's opposing that. So it's saying there's still a lot of like, wait, what's going on? What happened? Like, what did they say on the news? Like, what's going on with the, the planes or whatever? And then the moon's going to square Mars, which is in the late evening, overnight hours, but that is a little feisty, and that does create some tension in terms of joint financial matters, things revolving around markets, stuff that's kind of happening with future predictions, stuff kind of connecting to, obviously, politics, and changes with either weather, sky-related things. So to navigate the 30th, Thursday, know that early in the day, things feel a little bit more social, and it feels like also with like the moon sextile Chiron, we can heal. I think there's better harmonious connections with the moon trine Venus. There is evening tension, and it adds passion, but I think it could actually bring a little bit of conflict, especially in like group dynamics. So to navigate Thursday, what you want to do is you really want to focus on fostering relationships early in the day, checking in on people, connecting with them, being, empathic, healing old wounds through that connection with Chiron. And we want to diffuse some of the Mars squares late at night through stepping back and away from either power struggles or social kind of dynamics. Then on Friday, the 31st, which is Halloween, we wake up on Friday and the moon's in Pisces. Okay. Kind of like a scary night, movie night in for a lot of people, moon in Pisces. When the moon's in Pisces, we're looking at Jupiter. Jupiter's still direct. It's still, it's actually building into, it won't be exact, but right around, I think it's like the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, Jupiter's going to be within a degree of a trine to Saturn. So this is the closest we're going to see of a Jupiter-Saturn trine until next year when they're in fire signs. So Jupiter is direct. It wants growth and emotional expansive. Saturn is retrograde, so it's dealing with reassessing, reevaluating, and breaking down. So when the moon goes into Pisces, people are feeling more sensitive, more emotional, escapist mentality or tendencies, or things that are secretive or hidden or emotional in nature. And it is going to come into conjunction eventually with the North Node. It looks like that won't happen until closer to Saturday. So staying on Monday, moon moves into, Pisces, staying on Friday, October 31st. The moon is in Pisces. And in the morning, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to square Uranus and Gemini. So it's going to bring up some like emotional kind of turbulence, things that come out of left field. And it's also going to come into a square with Mercury. Mutable squares are always weather events, okay? So it's like we might start to see, especially in some places in the world, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, oh, it's really like feeling like fall now. The weather's really changing. It's like crisp in the air. We can just kind of tell that there's a change. We could also see some water events, Pisces, things revolving around, churches, hospitals, things revolving around immigration, Pisces themes. And it is going to square that Mercury, creating some emotional and intellectual conflict, and it is going to square Uranus. Another day that I would not want to be like trying to fly somewhere early or trying to drive somewhere early. I think there's going to be some challenges or some setbacks or some delays with communication or travel. It is brief first thing in the morning, but it's there. And then the moon's going to keep moving through Pisces. So it comes out of that square with those by about midday. And then for the rest of the day, now the moon is starting to move into a trine with the sun, which is going to hit by the evening hours. So when the sun and the moon trine, everything is kind of flowing. And I like that it's Halloween and the moon's in Pisces at 8 degrees. It's trining the sun in Scorpio at 8 degrees. Very spooky. I think we're going to see a lot of like ghosts and ghouls and things that are going to be more kind of like, morbid. Venus in Libra, so there's going to be some cute outfits, obviously. But with that conjunction, I think a lot of people might feel like a little bit more wanting to stay home, watching scary movies, doing things privately, or things that are going to be a little bit like more intimate. The other thing that I would also watch for is that as the moon is going through Pisces, like Jupiter is direct. So I think a lot of people are going to be like, yeah, we're having a party at home, or we're doing something with family, or like the family's all doing something together. Like it's going to be more kind of family and like, like on the home front based. And I think the daily vibe, it starts off in the morning very unpredictable, but then it starts to evolve into like this much more intuitive, empathic kind of flow as the sun and the moon trine. Lots of intuitive harmony. It's supporting emotional depth and creativity. And I'm liking some of the aspects later into the evening for Halloween. I like it a lot. And Halloween's on a Friday, right? We love that. So to navigate Friday, this is about adapting to morning disruptions. Like if you're trying to get up and like, you know, get out the door early, or if you're trying to travel early on Friday or something like that, like there's going to be some challenges there. It'll get easier as the day goes on, and we want to use the Pisces energy for being creative, inspired, you know, being sensitive. Like when the moon's in Pisces, people drink more, drug more, kind of emotionally, psychologically can be a little bit out of it. So it's also important to kind of realize that, you know, it's cool to play dress up and do the fantasy thing, but there are going to be some people who are going to be more likely to be driving and drinking or drugging. And especially with the trines to the sun and the moon being at an 8, just be careful out there. 8s can deal with poison when it's in Pisces, you know, so it's just like you're going out, you're drinking, you know your surroundings, know who you're around, kind of keeping out for crime, that kind of stuff. And I think align with that sun trine for kind of more compassionate, soulful kind of connections. All right, this takes us now into the 1st, which will be Saturday, Day of the Dead, right? So like the Halloween energy continues. I love that the Day of the Dead, we have the moon coming into conjunction with the North Node in Pisces, which is literally about ancestor connection and our roots. And it's also coming into conjunction with Saturn, which is going to be about elders and spirits. I actually think like the 31st through the 2nd, you always hear, oh, the veil is thin, but like things are actually very thin that weekend with the moon hitting Saturn, and we're going to have dreams, and it could be great for people who want to do seances or people who want to get divination done, or if you really do want to have some like spooky experiences. And all that's trining Mars in Scorpio and Jupiter in Cancer. What a great year to do something to honor your ancestors, even if that's not like your culture, to be able to kind of pay homage to who came before you and be putting out your candles or your prayers or your offerings or your water and stuff. Like, it's a really good time to do that. Any kind of ancestral work, if you want to do that this weekend, it's not because the Day of the Dead, it just happens to fall on that holiday. But I would say on the 1st, with that moon in Pisces coming into conjunction with the North Node, then it's going to come into conjunction with Saturn later in the day, and it's going to start trining Jupiter, and it's going to start trining Mars. Wow, really emotional day. I think that between the water trines and also, the fact that we are seeing the moon moving through Pisces, hitting the North Node, and we see mutual reception between Jupiter and the moon. Jupiter is in a lunar sign. The moon's in a Jupiterian sign, and they're trining Mars. Such a good day for emotional healing. It feels really karmic, and it feels like, I would be setting up my Saturday to do something that feels very much in a spiritual alignment, whether you want to spend time in your pool, you want to meditate, you want to go to church, you want to pray, you want to build an altar, whatever you want to do. You want to paint, music. This is about creating something that's dreamy and artistic and spiritual with structure, Saturn, right? And remember, Saturn's retrograde. This is also about powerful emotional alignment for manifesting, because it's trining Jupiter, and healing, Mars and Scorpio. Favorite day all day is going to be Saturday the 1st. This is a day to lean into destiny, to meditate on your North Node destiny goals. This is also about, I think, harnessing the grand water trine for inspired actions in relationships or creativity. I can't complain about a single thing that's going on Saturday. This is really the only day that I can't be critical about. All right, so then as we continue through Saturday, you're going to see the moon hit the North Node around 1 p.m. Central. You're going to then see the moon come into conjunction with Saturn and trine Jupiter in the late evening hours. And then overnight, the moon is going to hit Saturn, and then that's going to go into the early morning. So Sunday, we wake up and the moon is coming into conjunction with Neptune. So some of us can still be feeling like, lazy Sunday, taking a while to wake up, we're doing breakfast in bed, or we're still kind of recovering from the weekend. Pay attention to your dreams, I would say, on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but especially Saturday night going into Sunday morning. There could be some dreams or some like ancestral kind of connection and communication. I love that with the trine to Mars. I'm like, man, what a good day for like a seance. It would really be a really good day for that. So If you guys know anybody doing that in Texas, let me know. The other thing is that the moon's hitting, that spot between Saturn and Neptune where it's kind of like, this is where there's all these like illusions and confusion and things don't seem right and things are distorted and emotionally we feel kind of like we're getting overwhelmed and we're being like taken under the waves. All of that's trining Mars. Wow. So, the water trines continue. Vibe shift happens later in the day when the moon goes into Aries. But something that I just want to bring up really quick before I get into that is that this is the time that Venus is opposing Chiron and squaring Jupiter. It almost looks like Venus actually started coming into an opposition with Chiron like late on the 1st, early in the morning on the 2nd, but all day on Sunday, Venus opposed Chiron and then coming into a square with Jupiter. Very similar to what happened earlier in the week when we saw like the moon and Capricorn, kind of hit all that stuff. This is where the cardinal stuff is going to get hit again. Venus in opposition to Chiron is not fun. This is obviously going to be highlighting some of our own personal wounds and like where we're holding ourselves back or not working on ourselves or healing ourselves or feeling the lack of support from others. But also like a little bit of opposition or distance makes the heart grow fonder. So there can be this sense of like really realizing what our relationships are made of and bringing people in that can really help us and support us and vice versa. And that square to Jupiter just makes the whole thing feel bigger. So there can be this overindulgence theme that's going on Saturday and Sunday as Jupiter is starting to kind of receive a square from Venus. And what does Jupiter rule? Pisces. Over drinking, over sleeping, over drugging. Obviously also like things that go missing. So, we go out, we lose our purse, we forget our ID. Somebody goes missing, we can't find them in a crowd. There's weird and suspicious, things happening. And a lot of people know, obviously around Halloween, there's definitely a lot of people who, get abducted. I mean, I hate to kind of go there, but that could be a theme with people who go missing or issues revolving around people who disappear or problems with water. That's something you want to watch for, especially if you're traveling, if there's anything around water, be very careful with that. When Venus and Jupiter square, we want to overdo it. That's when we're like, oh, we'll take the extra scoop of ice cream, or, we will, spend a little bit more than we typically would, or we're indulging in things that are going to be more revolving around home, family. It's getting crazy. Some of the stuff that's going on with like shopping now, it's like, I went in to go to the store the other day and I was like, oh, the Halloween stuff's out. Obviously, it's mid-October, but then I go 2 aisles over and like the Christmas stuff is out. I'm like, what the heck? It's not even Thanksgiving yet. Which I get it, consumerism in the United States. But to me, this feels like we get to the day after Halloween, right? It's like Saturday and Sunday after Halloween. And then Venus is in Libra and everybody goes, okay, we have to focus on the aesthetics, or we have to focus on what we're planning for other people or what we're doing in relationships. And it starts squaring Jupiter. So it's like there could be a lot of relational issues. That's like, well, now we're going to start talking about, where are we spending Thanksgiving, or where are we spending Christmas, or how much money are we spending traveling back home, or what do we need to do to, spruce up the house and get things ready. And I'm not a hater on that. Like if I had it my way, Halloween would be like 3 months long, and I love Christmas just as much. I want to have a Christmas tree up and everything, but I think we're going to start to see where there are some issues with like people overdoing it and like losing themselves on, what are we going to do for the holidays, or what are we doing in relationships? There's also the other side of things where there are people that are like, I'm not even thinking about that. I'm worrying about where my next meal's coming from, or what's going to be happening with my job. The relationship stress and tension that's kind of coming up from just being overly inundated with some expectations and things that's going on the home front. And a lot of people are telling me, they're like, we're downsizing, we're moving back home with family. We are quitting jobs. We're moving, to be closer to relatives. That's a lot of that kind of Jupiter in Cancer stuff. So, I think the Venus in Libra opposed Chiron, Venus in Libra square Jupiter in Cancer. I do think there's a lot of relational healing themes that are going to come up on Sunday. It's very expansive energy. There is the potential for excess and overdoing it. And just watch for the morning where there's definitely this kind of like illusion-related morning, and then it's going to shift into something that's kind of fiery and more initiative. Like everybody's feeling a little tired and burnt out and exhausted from like the weekend, that they've had. And then boom, moon goes into Aries. That's going to happen on Sunday around 10 a.m. Central Time. And then the moon will start coming into a trine with Mercury. Okay, so now it's kind of like in the afternoon. Where are we going? What are we doing? You know, what's changing? What's the plan? And so maybe we're feeling like we've slept in, we kind of got our rest, you know. We can kind of get back into the swing of things. And Mercury moon is good for talking about action plans and, you know, traveling or kind of changes that are going to be happening. The trine's really great also because it is going to be talking about the bigger picture, being more optimistic about what's next. And when the moon's in Aries, we're active, right? We want to get things done. Mars is the ruler. And right now, it's now starting to come into a trine with Neptune. So we're passionate about a cause, or we're going, you know, based off of what our gut or intuition is telling us. So that's good. We get a little feisty also with that moon in a sextile to Uranus and Gemini. So it can spark some unusual travel, communication, or idea changes. And a sextile to Pluto in Aquarius. So things kind of, they get very active in the afternoon on Sunday. It looks like that's going to be pretty much the only other aspect we're going to see. That Venus-Jupiter square will happen around 5 p.m. Central Time on Sunday the 2nd, and then the moon starts coming into an inconjunct or a quincunx with the Scorpio sun overnight. And that's it. So let's do a quick review. I know a lot of you guys have heard a lot about Mercury between like the Mercury retrograde video and like Mercury and Scorpio, but this will probably be the last one for a while until after Mercury is coming back into Sagittarius or when Mercury goes direct next month. So you guys will get a break. But for those of you guys who don't know, we do cover all the retrogrades, the new moons, the full moons, all that stuff in my weekly videos. So go and check those out. And let's talk a little bit about Mercury going into Sagittarius. Obviously, I'm a Western astrologer, so for those of you guys who are not used to my astrology, that's what I practice. I'm not a Vedic astrologer. I like to use Western, and I'm going to be showing this to you guys from the perspective of the whole rising signs. Now, if you're a Placidus user, you just got to figure out where 0 degrees of Sagittarius start. You may have to listen to more than one rising sign. Please listen to your rising sign first, and then you can listen to your sun and your moon sign. But your rising sign is going to tell you where literally in your life some of this stuff is going to be happening and kind of going down. And definitely let me know how it manifests for you guys. All right, and a reminder to Gemini, Virgo, and Sag. You guys are in the hot seat with this Mercury transit. All right, Aries and Aries risings. What's up, guys? You're going to have Mercury entering into Sag, moving into a fellow sister fire sign. Love it for you guys, especially if you're like the first 7 or 8 degrees of Aries. Mercury will be trining you throughout its first kind of cycle in Sagittarius. Mercury rules for you like vehicles, contracts, communication, learning, siblings. And it's also connected to your 6th house of health, habits, and work or, you know, scheduling. So as Mercury is going into your 9th house, what I'm predicting for you guys is because this is a house that deals with travel, being in airports, education, philosophy-related things, I'm expecting some kind of breakthrough that's going to happen in learning or travel plans. And there could potentially be some debates that could be, you know, on your beliefs that could spark growth. But keep in mind that there is a shadow period that is hinting at revisions in your routines or your health matters and what you're learning about communication, travel, or your work routines. I would just say explore new ideas boldly, but double check the details when it comes to work trips or legal documents or anything that involves communication this week. All right, we got Taurus and Taurus rising. What's up, Taurus? Mercury's entering into Sagittarius for you in your natal 8th house. Taurus, well, Mercury rules your 2nd house of personal finances and values. It also is relating to your 5th house of dating, romance, and children, creativity as well. And Mercury is going to be going into your 8th house, Sagittarius, in a sign that inconjuncts or quincunxes you. So you may not see some of the things that are coming, Taurus. Now, what I predict for you guys is that because it's going through an 8th house transit, it's going to be about intimacy, sex, passion. It can be about taxes, money owed, loans, you know, trying to get something kind of paid back. And I predict that some of you guys are going to be having deep discussions about money, maybe about financial transactions and something revolving around trading. Dealing with retirements, inheritances, taxes, 401ks, and secrets can emerge revolving around money and spending. So there could be a lot of back and forth that you have with you and a partner, or you and a bank, or like you and a, you know, dealing with debt, and you're having to figure out how to borrow, renegotiate, refinance, pay something off. Something like that's going on. You need to watch for being optimistic when it comes to investments, but there can also be a sense of feeling a little scattered when it comes to your thoughts, and it can lead to financial oversights during the pre-shadow. So if you're trying to apply for a loan, increase your credit, if you're trying to debt consolidate, read all the fine print of what that's going to cost you, and make sure that you're communicating thoroughly with other people, revolving around changes with finances, maybe talking a little bit more in depth about finances revolving around children or anything revolving around investing, changes that can be happening with insurance related matters. That can be a theme here as well. I recommend that you negotiate shared finances, in a peaceful manner, and try to clarify some of your romantic pursuits during this transit. We've got Gemini and Gemini rising, your guys' favorite time of the year, Mercury going into your opposite sign. And this is interesting for you because it's going to oppose Uranus in your sign. So I definitely think it's going to bring up some colorful communication. But obviously, Gemini, River Mercury goes is where you are. So Mercury rules you, yourself, your actions, as well as the past, home, and family. And it's moving into your natal 7th house. So the 7th house is relationships, partnerships, your market space, your relationship to a spouse, clients, even a therapist. So I do predict for you guys that communication in relationships becomes expansive and direct now. There is potential for exciting new connections or meeting new people, but it is debilitated and it is in shadow. So watch for misunderstandings with partners, miscommunications. And I think there's a lot of previewing, who do I hold on to? Who do I go back to? And maybe having conversations or discussions about home or family living situations. Good luck. We've got Cancer and Cancer rising. You guys are going to be experiencing Mercury's ingress into the sign of Sagittarius in your natal 6th house. Now for you guys, Mercury rules your 3rd house of communication, short distance trips, vehicles, and learning, as well as your 12th house of what's hidden and subconscious or behind the scenes. And it will be moving into your 6th house. So Cancer, this is a good place to have Mercury because Mercury likes being in the 6th house where it can work. It can get organized, it can focus on health dialogues, and it could be adventurous, like going back to work could be adventurous, getting back into the gym, learning more about your health. And this is really about ideas flowing when it comes to improving your health and your habits, but there could be too much going on at one time. So you could feel like it's kind of scattered energy where you're overlooking some work details, and the shadow signals spiritual reflection and reflecting on some of your kind of mental, spiritual health related matters and how that's affecting your habits or your routine. Getting into a walking, biking, or journaling routine can be really helpful for you guys. This can be a time where also your mind is on getting organized or getting back to work or like healing or dealing with a health related situation. Watch for some schedule fluctuations. I think that's very likely to happen, and you want to optimize your routines with better big picture planning. Maybe meditate to integrate some of your subconscious insights and how to intuitively navigate your day-to-day. Good luck. We've got Leo and Leo rising. You guys are going to experience Mercury's ingress into the sign of Sagittarius, fellow sister fire sign, in your natal 5th house. For you guys, Mercury is all about your money, your resources, and your self-esteem or spending power. It's also connected to your networks, friends, and goals through Gemini in your 11th house. Now, Mercury is transiting the 5th house, which is a house that Leo is very familiar with. This is a house that deals with creativity, being on stage, self-expression, joy, taking chances, romance, as well as children. So I predict for a lot of you guys that this is about learning to be more playful, optimistic when it comes to your expression in love or hobbies. Maybe there's some networking sparks. But remember that it is debilitated and in shadow. So, this is also about revisiting some of your group plans and goals. It may mean that there is a reconnection with friends or creative collaborators from the past, or maybe you are investing yourself more in creative hobbies or trying to launch your own business. And there could be reconnections that are kind of sparking up from people romantically from the past as well. Good luck. Virgo and Virgo rising, you guys are going to see Mercury, your chart ruler, moving into Sagittarius in your natal 4th house of home roots and family. Now, Mercury rules you. It is also directly connected to your career status as well as your professional life. And as Mercury moves into your 4th house, you are definitely going to be feeling the effects of, I think, the incoming retrograde shadow. I think for a lot of you guys, this is really dealing with your living situation, maybe your family. It could be like dealing with a landlord. It could be about remodeling a home. It could be about, getting settled into a place you just moved into. Maybe some changes that you were personally making with your career, your reputation, and how that's kind of giving you time to kind of get settled or get organized. And I predict home communications can expand. Family debates or moves are likely during this period, but there is a sense of like kind of going back and forth, like, do I want to do this or do I not? Do I want to travel back home? Do I want to change where I'm living? And there can be some blurs regarding your self-image, and the shadow coming up is really prompting major reevaluations regarding your relationship to not only your career, but also your home. So everything is kind of impacting each other. I would discuss things about changes with your home or your family optimistically, but clarify professional goals and try to do journaling whenever you can to kind of get a little bit more clarity about where you see yourself going. Let me know, Virgo, how does this start off for you guys? I'd love to hear. For my Libras and Libra risings, you guys are going to have Mercury ingressing into the sign of Sagittarius, moving into your natal 3rd house. Mercury does well in this house, Libra. It likes it because of its connection to Gemini. And the 3rd house is all about the mind, short distance trips, cars, moving, anything revolving around documents, learning, siblings as well. Mercury is tied to your 9th house of publishing and anything revolving around long distance travel or higher education. It's also connected to the 12th house of foreign lands, private places, spirituality, and self-undoing. So Libra, Mercury moving into this house is really setting the stage for there to be opportunities for short trips, road trips, getting out of town. Learning can accelerate, broadening your ideas, which can kind of flow better, but it is debilitated and in shadows. So the focus is a little scattered here, and it definitely is about uncovering hidden beliefs, hidden documents, hidden knowledge. It can be about reconnecting with your local community or with family. I think that a lot of my Libra risings, and I said this in the horoscopes, but I was like, you guys may be considering, getting off of social media or going back and remodeling a website, or you're thinking about going back to something that you started learning that you didn't finish, or finishing that book. Or there can be a sense of planning some kind of short distance trips that are going to be coming up here very soon. So let me know. I think about the last one as a Libra rising, and it was like, I was waiting for it. I found my tail light went out, and I was having issues with the lights in my car, and I was like, Mercury retrograde. Some brief scheduling issues, Mercury retrograde. Reconnected with one of my siblings, Mercury retrograde. So it was like all those things happened. So I'm like, what's going to happen this time? Especially with some of the aspects in the 2nd house. We'll see. Let me know, Libra. All right, we've got Scorpio and Scorpio risings. You guys have Mercury entering into your natal 2nd house. Obviously, the 2nd house deals with your money, possessions, spending power, and self-esteem, while Mercury is connected to your goals, networks, and allies, as well as your 8th house of joint finances, saving, and also intimacy. Scorpio, this is a good period for you. This is the first planet to hit your 2nd house of money. Mars will be there. Yes, Mercury will retrograde, but the Sun and Venus will be there throughout this next month or so. So it's a really strong financial time that's kind of building up for you guys. Because Mercury deals with intimacy and also your goals, and it's moving through the 2nd house of finances, this is about being more optimistic, Sagittarius, when it comes to your financial talks or your financial values. There may be group investment or some kind of investment you're making with another person, or you're having to kind of pivot what's going on with what's mine versus what's yours. The shadow coming up is having you revisit some of your professional goals, and whether it's trying to pay off debt or, trying to make a trade, or maybe it's about making a big purchase. That is going to come up. And there's also a lot of reevaluating some of your social connections here as well. I would say that some of you guys might feel like you have to spend money to make money. Some of you guys might feel like there's something that you're wanting to cash out in, and you're kind of going back and forth, or about a major purchase. I do think that what's interesting is that throughout this cycle, Mercury has met with Mars several times. So it was like, if you weren't impulsive at the end of October, some of you guys might find as you're getting into November, when Mercury and Mars meet, you're getting ready to pull the trigger and make a decision about something that you ultimately have to spend money on, or something you have to buy. So that's what I think it's going to be about. But I would say negotiate your resources, do so boldly. Align your goals with a sense of authentic self-worth and really know your worth before you go making any money moves, okay? Good luck, Scorpio. Sag and Sag rising, how you guys doing? Are you guys crashing out yet? I saw some comments from people. They were like, you told me about all this stuff last month, and then they were like, oh my God, it happened, you know, because the horoscope's been pretty gnarly for Sagittarius rising, especially the ones that have been hit by the Saturn-Neptune square. So this retrograde's hitting the earlier Sages, but how you guys doing? Mercury's moving into your sign, so watch out. You guys have like a megaphone now. Obviously, the first house is the house of self. So whether this is your body, your appearance, your instinctual nature, what you do first thing in the morning, Mercury being in the first house means that it's really lighting up yourself and your identity. While Mercury is tied to your career, whether that's leadership, your professional status, or how people know you, and it's also connected to your 6th house of relationships, whether that's professional or romantic, spouses, partnerships of all sorts. So Mercury in the first house is great because you're bringing relationships to you and you're bringing work to you. So I do predict that Sagittarius risings are going to really find that personal communication style is very fiery and feisty and direct. This is about identity exploration, you know, telling relationships or telling people professionally what you're doing or what's going on. But remember, it's debilitated. Remember, it's going to go retrograde here soon. It's in shadow. So this will amplify the bluntness. And the shadow is really about you reviewing your career and your relationship path. What's working, what's not working. This will meet with Mars, where you're having to uncover some of your biggest fears when it comes to changing your career, changing your relationship. And you have to let certain things go and like kind of put down the armor. And there are other people that do need to be cut off wholeheartedly, especially because the Mars transit's going to oppose Uranus in your 7th. Mercury is going to oppose Uranus in your 7th. And there's a lot of you going, I don't know how to react or respond to some of the changes that's going on with a relationship or their lack of, or there being changes in my career. And you're feeling like everything's like a moving part. Go back and listen to my horoscope. A lot of what I told you guys was you have to really watch your mouth still the next week or so. Really all the way up until the 10th, the 11th, when Mercury conjuncts Mars, because you may say things or make decisions about things and then realize, ooh, now I need time to integrate. You might go back into your cocoon a little bit in November. Not bad stuff, but you've got a lot of retrogrades and things happening, and even Jupiter, you know, your ruler being in the 8th house. Look at all these water houses getting lit up. This is a season of things winding down, Sagittarius, okay? So it's about whether or not you're going to fight that and resist that, or you're going to be open to it. So own your voice when it comes to who you are at work and also your relationships. Project optimism professionally, but also give yourself a little bit of grace if you're still navigating some of these changes and how it's going to play out for the next month or so. Good luck. Capricorn, Capricorn rising. You guys are going to be experiencing Mercury's transit into the sign of Sagittarius, moving into your 12th house of the deep subconscious, hidden, spiritual, and I think self-undoing. International travel can come up here. Mercury rules travel in your 9th house and education. It's also directly tied to your 6th house of scheduling, health, and wellness. A lot of this is about how your sleep schedule, your mental health is impacting your productivity, your physical health, and your routines. It might be about where work and travel are kind of throwing each other off a little bit. Obviously, Mercury transiting the 12th house is going to be bringing up some pretty significant dreams in the pre-shadow. It's also going to be wildly intuitive. It's good for behind-the-scenes thinking or international travel, spiritual studies, but there can be scattered thoughts and dreams. The shadow is really hinting at health and belief revisions that are taking place. Maybe you feel like you need to rest or retreat, or you need some time alone to hit reset before you're getting back into, you know, the game of the new year when your birthday season is kind of kicking off. Do watch your health and habits. I would say with Uranus in your 6th house, that can bring up some health issues. And then with your 6th house Lord retrograde next month in your 12th, that can also bring some health issues. But it's because that there's something shifting about either your schedule, your travel, or kind of like your sleep habits. I like the idea of like going back to meditation practice or going back to therapy or going back to like a foreign country that you haven't been to in a while. Like these things are nice, or doing some kind of spiritual like retreat work. But yeah, you have to watch your health during some of these transits, Capricorn. And if you can retreat and get time for reflection, or plan some kind of philosophical pursuit, you know, and do so while maintaining your health and a routine, then I think that's kind of like the whole purpose of this particular transit.
Good luck. We've got Aquarius and Aquarius rising. You guys are going to see Mercury's ingress into Sagittarius in your natal 11th house. Obviously, Mercury deals with joint finances, intimacy, and other people's money. It's also tied to your 5th house of romance, creativity, and self-expression. So as Mercury moves into your 11th house of Sagittarius, it's kind of bringing in those themes of creativity and romance and intimacy and shared resources within your goals, your friends, and your social groups. I do anticipate some of you guys are going to have group discussions that are going to ignite new ideas, creative collaborations, creative writing, reconnecting with friends. These are all good ideas. It's going to bring social adventure, but it is debilitated and it's in shadow. So watch for overcommitment to planning parties, seeing friends, getting out there, doing things, and like the cost and the expense side to that. The shadow can be about revisiting creative depths and also any kind of joint funding of projects. And I would be networking expansively and sharing intimate ideas only with trusted allies. Some of you guys might feel like there is some changes going on with some of your friends or your social groups throughout this particular transit over the next month. Good luck. And for my Pisces and Pisces risings, you guys are going to experience Mercury's ingress into Sagittarius, moving into your 10th house of career and your professional reputation. Mercury rules relationships and also anything connecting to business partnerships, clients, even spouses, and your 4th house of home, family, and the past. If you happen to be like a early degree Pisces, like 0 to 7 degrees, you know, this is pretty colorful because Mercury is not only squaring you, but it's also opposing Uranus. So there's definitely some kind of changes on the home front, potentially even some reworking or reorganization that's going to happen at work. And your relationship to your career or your professional status or your relationship status changing in some way. So I predict with Mercury retrograde coming up, you know, be really careful with making any knee-jerk reactions like I'm quitting my job, I'm starting a new job, I'm going back to an old job, I'm launching a business. Really think about that because it can be a little kind of topsy-turvy trying to make that work over the next couple of weeks. Right now, with Mercury entering into this house, professional communications are definitely bold and you can be a lot more optimistic about the relationships and the connections that you have with people that you're helping. And there can be a lot of career opportunities, but details can slip. And we can be counting our chickens before they hatch and assuming we get jobs or that certain projects are going to move forward, and we might see that certain things slow down because of our relationship to other people or changes that are happening on the home front that's pulling us out of work. So the shadow is really prompting home or relationship reviews and how that needs to happen because it's impacting your career or your professional kind of standings. Pitch ideas optimistically at work, but try to balance family talks and have more clarity out of relationships. Be patient with yourself as you go through this kind of retrograde process next month because it's helping you gain more clarity or potentially take a break from work or go back to school to have, like, I think, a better sense of what you do want to do in the long term when it comes to your career. Hope that helps, Pisces. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. That is the week ahead. Obviously from, let's see, I don't even know the date. From October 26th through November the 2nd. I hope that was helpful for you guys. And I hope you guys enjoy and embrace this Mercury and Sagittarius kind of transit. Enjoy it before we see the retrograde next month. It's fiery. It produces a lot of growth. Just stay mindful of the shadow ahead. And if this resonated with you guys, if you liked my content, please give me a thumbs up, consider sharing, and definitely subscribe to the channel. It helps the channel grow. If you guys want more information about me or my work, if you want to book a one-on-one reading, maybe you'd like to learn tarot astrology, or if you want to sign up for my newsletter to get alerts for the Black Friday stuff we're going to do next month or my tarot drop, click the links below, head over to beyondtheveiledtarot.com, sign up for my newsletter. When you're prompted on the home screen, you're going to get all of that information next month when it comes out. Please consider sharing this with a friend, and don't forget to leave me a comment below. Are you feeling the Mercury retrograde stuff? What do you think about some of the topics that I kind of brought up connected to Sagittarius? Am I missing anything? Love to hear you guys' feedback, and I hope you guys enjoy this week ahead. I will catch you guys back here next week on Tuesday. Stay in alignment this week, and I'll see you soon. All right, take care.